Hello and welcome back again. Today's story is of Joseph Stalin's economy. What's happening in the USSR? Here's Griffin with the industrialization story.
November 1927, Joseph Stalin launched his revolution from above by setting two extraordinary goals for Soviet domestic policy: rapid industrialization and collectivization of agriculture. His goals were to eradicate capitalism and transform the Soviet Union into an industrialized and completely socialist state. Joseph Stalin and the Soviet government enforced a collectivization policy later that year, of which consolidated individual peasant households in collective farms known as kolkhozes. It was Stalin's thinking that if Russia was to become a key player in the global market, the country needed to industrialize rapidly and increase production. To do this, he introduced three 5-year plans. The first two plans set goals that were very unrealistic: a 250% increase in overall industrial development and a 330% expansion in heavy industry alone. These unrealistic expectations caused serious problems such as thousands of accidental deaths, starvation, and inadequate living conditions. The third of the 5-year plans was on the cusp of World War II, and therefore mainly focused on the production of weapons. Although the third of the 5-year plans only lasted about 3 years, the first and second plans generated a production of goods unlike anything the Soviet Union had ever experienced before. Some key achievements of the plans included the Turkestan-Siberian Railroad, the Dnieper Dam, and the Belomor Canal.
Thank you, Griffin. And now here's Brianna with the agricultural story.
Sovkhaye were state farms of the Soviet Union. These were formed after the seizure of large land estates of previously prosperous peasants. Landless peasants were paid regulated wages to work these farms. Contrasting the Sovkhaye were Kolkhaye, which were collective farms within the Soviet Union in 1929, operated on state-owned property, and peasants worked on these for paid salaries, determined by the amount of labor put in on a daily basis. The main goal of these farms were to make them the dominant form of agricultural production. Both of these farms had an internal passport system, forcing the peasants to stay within their assigned Sovkhaye or Kolkhaye, known as neo-serfdom. Beginning in 1932, Joseph Stalin instilled strict laws, causing for the seizure of all food in households, closed off any food from entering the country, and any food found was considered sacred property of the state. As a result, chaos erupted in the countryside, causing famine and starvation, known as the Soviet famine of 1932 and 1933. Within this widespread famine was one local Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic called the Holodomor. This was also known as the Terror Famine in Ukraine. During this time, between 2.5 and 7.5 million Ukrainian citizens starved to death. The famine occurred as a result of rejection of outside aid and the confiscation of all food. It is believed that Joseph Stalin employed this plan in order to eliminate Ukrainian independence action and was determined to be the worst genocide in Ukrainian history.
Thank you, Brianna. Now, who is actually working with the industrialization and the agriculture? Here's Emily with the working groups.
Stalin's political beliefs led to a distrust of wealthy farmers, a group he named kulaks. He launched a campaign known as dekulakization, which repressed the wealthier section of the lower class through deportations, arrests, and mass executions in the name of collectivism. On August 31st, 1935, a man named Alexei Stakhanov set a national record for the amount of coals in ton transported in a single work shift. The praise he received incited a movement amongst workers known as the Stakhanovite movement. This movement rewarded individuals for independent achievement, convening at the All-Union Conference later that year to receive public awards for their workplace achievements. These people became public figures representative of what all men should strive to attain. Peer motivation was also utilized in the youth, as demonstrated by the Commissal. This group consisted of young Soviets aged 14 to 28 who spread communist ideas amongst the Soviet people. Those who wished to hold leadership positions in the Communist Party started as a youth in the Commissal, demonstrating the indoctrination of youth at this time. Propaganda was another indoctrination tool used by Stalin, as most of the propaganda used at this time supported the empowerment of the individual, inspiring them to act in favor of his party.
Emily, and now who is actually controlling this economy? Here's Katie with the story.
The Soviet economy under Stalin operated through many departments, each with a specific purpose for operation. The VSNKH was the superior Soviet institution of the national economy that controlled the management of industry. Under this institution, various committees were established, including the Gosplan, the Gosnob, and the Gosbank. The Gosplan, or the State Planning Committee, was a central board, which translated into specific national plans the general economic objectives outlined by the Communist Party and the government. The Gosnob represented the State Supplies Committee for material technical supply within the Soviet Union. Its primary responsibility consisted of the allocation of producer goods to enterprises. This critical function played a key role in the absence of markets. The Gosbank encompassed the banking system for the Soviet Union and functioned on a credit and documentation system where everything traded or purchased and the quality of each product between farming industries, for example, were kept under documentation by the Gosbank in case the quality or amount did not reach the requested standard. This monobank, as Westerners identified the system, allowed total control over money and trade, with private banks being outlawed. To enforce these systems and objectives of each committee, Stalin issued the OGPU, which consisted of the secret police force under Stalin's rule. Stalin utilized OGPU agents to deport millions, including exploiters and profiteers who tried to cheat and resist the economic system. In 1934, the OGPU was renamed the NKVD and was given unrestricted control by Stalin, who remained the single individual the organization was to be responsible to.
Thank you, Katie. That's all for today on Joseph Stalin's Economy. I'm Sophie Weiner, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.